New York's new law dramatically expands the statute of limitations for victims of child sexual abuse to file suits or seek criminal prosecution against their abusers, whether institutional or individuals. Previously, victims of abuse in New York had until their 23rd birthday to file a civil suit or seek prosecution. Now, victims in New York have until their 28th birthday to seek felony prosecution and until their 55th birthday to file a civil suit. The law also creates a one-year period starting on August 14th for all victims of abuse to file civil lawsuits, no matter how long ago the abuse occurred. Victims have been pushing for this legislation in New York for well over a decade. Originally, churches and insurance companies were bitterly opposed to this legislation, but the church agreed to a compromise. As long as other private and public institutions could also be covered by the law, they would no longer oppose it. The American Insurance Association spent over $100,000 lobbying against this legislation. We reached out to them for a comment, but they were unavailable at the time. Now, the Insurance Association wasn't opposed to an expanded statute of limitations going forward, but they opposed the retroactive looking back application of the statute of limitations, fearing naturally that this would open the floodgates to innumerable lawsuits. With all the money spent opposing this legislation, we spoke to one victim advocate who said that despite all of her political efforts, she never thought she'd see the day that this bill would become a law.
It was really shocking to see how much money and how much time was spent against such an important bill to protect children. Because it's not only about compensation, it's also a way to expose people that are still out in society doing exactly what they were doing 20 years ago. I was extremely drained and depressed, I think would be an understatement, of seeing how lawmakers would stop from what was right. So when the law got passed in February, I had a lot of mixed feelings. I felt accomplished and I felt happiness to know that all the work that was happening was finally showing. But at the same time, I said, okay, well, now what? What do I do? But I know that I have opened the door for many people to kind of get their voice and their justice. I expect a lot of people going into the precincts and making the reports. And I do hear a lot of backlash like, oh, we're going to be overflowed. We're going to be overflowed with people claiming that they've been abused or this. But shouldn't that be an embarrassment that there are this many people out there that have been abused and that all these people are still out there doing the same exact thing?
Of course, this legislation will result in a lot of lawsuits, and defending them will not be easy, as many times they will involve allegations that are decades old. Early this morning, there were already almost 100 cases filed in court. This number could grow to hundreds by the end of the day. New York follows the modern trend of states that are lengthening or eliminating altogether their statutes of limitations for victims of sex crimes, recognizing that too often in these cases, victims can't come forward until years later.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.